The 311 Response Center is the main gateway to city services. As small as our population is, we do take a lot of requests. Most cities that have 311 systems, you'll find that more of their calls are question related and don't end up in service requests. Pittsburgh, I believe, is the complete opposite. The majority of our calls are going to end with a service request. Sometimes we'll get one call that will generate 25, 30 different requests.
I really believe that 311 is a great factor, probably in all cities, because if we didn't have it, then the public would probably have a harder time trying to contact these offices just on a personal level, because there's so much. So we do what we can to try to help in between, because sometimes it doesn't always have to go directly to whatever that department is, because if we can help, if we have whatever forms that need to be sent out, then that's one less step that someone has to, one less day that they have to wait for the mail to get their items and things like that. So I guess at the end of the day, as long as they're satisfied, then we've done our job.
Citizens can contact us a variety of ways. We have live operators. We've expanded our hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which is exciting. Different hours, odd hours, feel free to call us and leave a message at 311. It answers 24 hours a day. And then we also have 311 postcards that we'll pass out at community meetings that you can fill out and send in. Those are postage paid. So if you have a group event and need some of those, please feel free to let us know. We also have a Twitter account, and our handle for that is @PGH311. And we can actually process service requests through that handle and send back your service request ID number. Through the years, we've been growing and building, and we're up to 11 staff now. And one of our most exciting endeavors at this point is we're finally getting new software. We're currently using something that was built in-house in the late 1980s, and now we're moving up to a new product. We're in the process of implementing it and hope to have full implementation by this summer or fall. So that's going to make a lot of great improvements to 311, the efficiency of the service we can provide, so we're very excited about that.
Twitter has opened up an opportunity for an entire new process to people who don't normally have an opportunity to reach out to 311. It's fast, it's monitored 24/7, generally replying to people between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. It can be challenging at times to respond to a certain person's needs with only 140 characters, but there's a few times where we have to send multiple tweets.
We're making our website more self-service, so people will be able to go in and find the answers to questions they need without having to contact us. It makes it a lot more convenient. We'll be building the knowledge base that goes along with that. For years, updating and putting more information in so that we can try to address everyone's needs.
This is the type of job where you have to have an open mind, have to have compassion, and you have to listen. Because you can easily not understand what someone says, and then it just doesn't end well. So we try to make sure that each person and their concerns, we make them aware that we are very serious about what it is that they're bringing to us, and that we want to help them, and we want to give them that feeling of it's not so much like a machine. I'm a real person when I answer the phone, and let me do what I can to help to assist you.
Everyone have
have a good time last night? All right. So yesterday I mentioned several times how excited I am that the mayor gave me some fabulous new colleagues. These are two of my favorite. Sally and Lex are part of our community affairs team, and they are such a great compliment to 311, but I'm going to let them tell you that. But I am proud to introduce Sally and Lex.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you everyone for joining us. We hope you are having a wonderful time in Pittsburgh so far and continue to do so. As Wendy mentioned, we are part of the Office of Community Affairs, which was established in January 2014 when Mayor Perdue took office to provide a link between the city neighborhoods and city government. We'll get into that a little bit more, but just to give you an introduction to who we are. Sally is one of our community liaisons, along with our colleague Charnay. Sally also is the coordinator of our Civic Leadership Academy program. My name is Lex. I'm currently the acting manager of the office. Our regular manager, Grant, is on a brief leave of absence. He'll be joining us again in June. So we consider ourselves a one-stop shop for city government. We work with residents both that contact us directly and that we work with via neighborhood associations and other community groups to try to solve problems that are affecting our neighborhoods. When we can't solve a problem, that doesn't mean we still can't help. We can connect people with maybe the appropriate agency, maybe it's a state agency or a county agency to help them solve their problems, or refer them to nonprofit resources if it's not an issue that government has jurisdiction over. We also collaborate to resolve quality of life issues, and we really strive to have an open dialogue and constant lines of communication with members of our community. We have an email database that we regularly use that has the leadership of every community group in the city of Pittsburgh. We use social media. If you are on Twitter or Facebook, you can go to twitter.com or facebook.com/OCAPGH to see our social media accounts. We are able to provide a little bit of guidance and advice to departments when they want to know what the feeling of a certain project or of a certain plan in the community is. Say, for example, later this year in Pittsburgh, there's a big bridge that is going to be coming down, and we're working closely with our Department of Public Works and the neighborhood where that bridge is coming down to try to ease that process. One of our small business managers in the mayor's office, at kind of our nudging, is working to develop a fund that will help provide low interest loans to businesses that might be affected by the bridge closure. So we gain and provide community input on policy, like I said, and then we have regular staff community meetings, both amongst ourselves and with members of other government entities. We have regular staff meetings with our counterparts in the Department of Public Safety. We have recently started a regularly scheduled meeting with the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority and any other group, city council offices we meet with regularly, kind of on an ad hoc basis. Anyone that deals with constituents regularly, we sit down with and we kind of go back and forth on particular issues. Wendy's lovely office, we don't necessarily have a regular meeting, but that's just because we're emailing back and forth or calling each other pretty much every other day because we work with them so closely. And then finally, we do attend community-based organizations, meetings, and events every night throughout the week, sometimes on the weekends, just as something comes up and if something important in the community is happening, we do try to be there. On that note, I'll be turning it over to Sally. She's going to finish up the presentation. I actually have to, I've been asked to attend a meeting at the police headquarters to give some input on a crossing guard plan that we have, but I can stick around for a little bit, but if you see me sneaking out, that's why.
Right, and let's see.
There you go.
If anyone else needs this, Wendy, if you want to comment, you should hold that. And I do just want to emphasize on this point here. I think one of the most valuable things that our office offers is that, a lot of times when the city can't solve the problem or our office can't solve the problem, we have the time and the resources to give someone a very complete answer. And I think a lot of times that's just as satisfying when you understand what the system and the process is, and then you understand why it is that certain thing can't happen. So in my presentation today, I've broken down what we do into 4 fields. 4 fields of where we receive our resident input, and as well as where we talk to our residents as well. So I'll go through each and also go into the resources that we use when those calls or when we're out in the community, the resources that we use to address the issues. All right, so each one of us, the 4 of us, have a different type of responsibility. For example, Charnay has a background in social service, so she is a lot more familiar with those processes to address problems that fall under that category. Our manager, Grant, spends more time working at the next level up with other managers, working on a little more policy. He's spearheading our website that we hope to have up soon. And so I would say for me, I spend a lot more time on the phone, right? So our main line for community affairs is also my line, which I love. I mean, I couldn't give that up if I wanted to. So when I talk about where those calls come from, so the calls I get throughout the day, and it's definitely much lesser volume than what 301 would see. But those start with the mayor's office receptionist. The people I talk to are calling the mayor's office. And most of the conversations I have usually start with, I need to speak to the mayor. How do I get a meeting with the mayor right now? This is an emergency. And then we go from there. And so when that call comes to the receptionist, she identifies that there is, there's a need for follow-up, there's a need for research, there needs to be someone to track that issue. And that is when she transfers the call back to us, and then we process it from there. And I will say that, we do all 4 of us pick up calls as well. So when those calls come in, they fall into 3 rough categories that I've listed here. A lot of times people will call with, with 311 issues. Either they don't know that 311 exists, or they're a little hazy on how the system works, and so we'll just process those calls, right? Instead of transferring, all day long, I am sending things through the 301 online submission form, which is the most wonderful, wonderful thing in the world. So people call about potholes, especially right now because of our terrible winter we've had. People want their streets paved. They have issues with buildings that are falling down or neighbors that are not maintaining their property. We get a lot of calls about people want to see intersection upgrades, right? So they don't feel safe crossing the street because a crosswalk has run away, or there aren't any blinking signs for pedestrians. So people will call about things like that and ask. And those are easy for us to process because it's a matter of sending it through 311. We can track it, and then the appropriate department will address it. So nothing too crazy. And then the second one. So a lot of times what happens is people call with an issue that it needs a little more attention than what a simple 311 request can offer, or it's a multi-layered issue. So for example, I had a woman call who has a large retaining wall in front of her home that's crumbling, and it was not clear whether or not the city owned the retaining wall, and she wasn't getting a response back of whether who was responsible for it. So in that case, then I'm able to follow up with the manager at that DPW zone and say, hey, do you have, can you fill me in on what's going on with this issue? And so he did have to check, and it ended up that the city did own the wall. So we're going from there. Nuisance properties are another great example of something that sometimes can need a little bit more coordination as well. And what I'll find too is that, so someone has a building that's falling down behind them, a home that's been abandoned. He calls me and he says, I've called 311 all these times and nothing's being done. And then I go back in the system and see that he's called a couple times in the last 3 or 4 years, but he's never actually said, please consider this home for demolition. Please, address these structural issues. He'll say things like, there's paint there's 10 cans of paint on the porch, or there's weeds. So he's calling, but he's not saying the right key phrase that he needed to get someone to come out and get that house on the demolition list. So that's something that we can rectify and then help him track the issue to its end, keep them updated. And I think what helps as well is to explain how that process works. Right, so you have a building that's falling down, and you send it through 311 to request a building inspector to look at it. They'll look at the property, and they have to send a letter to notify the property owner they have 30 days to address it. If they haven't addressed that in 30 days, then they're going to send them a citation to take them to the magistrate. Then they have to schedule a hearing to go to the magistrate and discuss, and try and have the magistrate hold up a fine because they're not taking care of their property. So it's a long process that people don't realize, that there's that many steps. So they're frustrated because they don't understand, why wasn't this knocked down yesterday? Why wasn't this done yesterday? We can take the time to say, actually, you've got 5 to 10 steps here that you have to get through, and here are some snags that you can run into, and here's how we can help you with those. And another great one that we get a lot is people that call about the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority. So we developed a really wonderful working relationship with PWSA. Sometimes people call, they're having trouble with getting through on the line. PWSA has been making a lot of upgrades. And so sometimes people are getting an estimated bill or a wide range of issues, and so we're able to talk to people and say, so we're educated to try and explain and walk people through what's going on, or we can send them an email and they can address the problem as well. So, probably one of our favorites is every once in a while we'll get kind of a hot button issue. So one of our first big event was last year. There was a recycling plant that had closed, and they had just left all the recycling material sitting around. So the neighborhood was very concerned that they were going to start getting rats. So they came out and said, please, Mayor Pino, address this rat problem. So the mayor said, yes, absolutely, we will get people in there to put out rat poison so we can address it. But here, very close by, there was a nest of bald eagles that someone had put a camera on. And so it had a huge following of people that watched these eagles all day. And so when they heard that somewhere nearby someone might be putting out rat poison, the eagle could come and pick up a rat that had eaten the poison, and then our poor baby eagles might not make it. And so we got a lot of calls and emails about this issue. So we're able to have a response right from our office to address everyone that calls, so everyone gets an individualized response, whether it be a phone, 5-minute phone call, etc. So they know what's going on, keep people up to date on the issue, and then help our administration navigate it, because now they have this aggregate data of what the public is saying about the issue. And so we've had a few of those around a dog park, around placement of our new bike share system, and it's great to be able to have, here's your Excel document of the 75 people that called, and this many people think this, and this many people think this. It can be very helpful in making decisions. All right, so our third one, which for me can sometimes be the most frustrating, because the issues that fall outside of the city's scope also tend to be the most serious and the ones that we are least able to address, right? Because a city, a municipality, right, we deliver services to citizens. Social services happen on the county level, and a lot of people don't understand the difference between a legal issue and what something your municipality, aka your mayor, would address. So this is where those relationships are very important, and this is where our research is very important, that we have lists of places you can call to get free legal help, places you can call if you need social services, and knowing which one of those, which one of those agencies will work best, giving people the opportunity to still receive help, even though we can't administer it directly. Something that also is very interesting about Pittsburgh is that we end up getting a lot of calls about. So Pittsburgh is a municipality of 300,000 people inside a county of 1.2 million. Right? So the mayor is only in charge of that little, island of 300,000 people. The county executive, who oversees the county, oversees that 1.2 million. And I will recall sometimes, and especially people who might not have lived here too long, they don't realize that there are two separate people that do that, right? Philadelphia, the mayor of Philadelphia is the mayor of the county and the city. It's the same thing. But instead, we have two layers here, and that will create confusion for residents. So we're able to walk them through that and explain, that's county level, so these are the people that you have to call to get that addressed, right? We can't work upwards. And then that's another good example of we have some very strong relationships with people in the county executive's office. So when it's necessary, we can send them an email and say, hey, can you follow up with this person? Can you explain to me this process so I can pass it along and help people out? And another really popular one as well is people who have issues with within the public school system. Right, so the public schools are governed by a separate elected body, the school board. They control even probably the teacher, policy, etc. Those are the people that set that. And so sometimes people don't understand that difference, and they feel that the mayor should be able to go in and and address things like that. When in reality, we just don't have any jurisdiction over that area. So just working to try and we have to know all this stuff, right? We have to understand these systems so we can explain to people. We don't want to just say, oh, that's not our problem, see you later, right? We want to be able to give a detailed answer as to how that structure works, so you as a constituent understand the difference, right? You don't feel like you're being brushed off, because we care about your issue. We just unfortunately don't always have those resources in our particular office. So let's see if I've got anything. And I should mention too, the two big ones that will get called out a lot are in wintertime, people who want their streets plowed, and in the summertime, people who want vacant lots, their weeds cut. So that's another one where proven is a huge help. All right, and so when I've got somebody on the phone, I try and aggregate the call and what they're looking for as quickly as possible. One of the first questions that I find most important to ask is, who have you spoken to so far? Because most of the calls that come to our office, when someone's calling the mayor, it is the call of last resort. They've already called 3 or 4 other people, and whatever problem it was they had with that system, then it ends up with us. So often I'll find, they've called their city councilman's office. And we work very closely with city council on a lot of different constituent issues. So I'm able to call, get a background of what's going on. Sometimes, constituents don't give the whole story. So I can find out from that council person, what research they've done. It's also really helpful when someone has a name of the person they've spoken to in a department. Because it's the same thing. Sometimes the story I hear from that initial call and then the background I get from the person in the department doesn't match up. So I can rectify that and then, re-explain to the person calling, here's what's going on. Third, a lot of people that call, and especially when someone is pretty stressed about the situation, they're not always clear with what they are asking for, or they have a really big ask and they're kind of, circling around it. So identifying what is it that you're looking for right now? Like what to you would be a conclusion to this issue, a solution to this issue. So that's really important. And also trying to pull down the amount of time that the actual call takes. So it can be helpful to try and, just identify what it is that they're looking for. And then something else that's really important too is, and this is something that we've just been learning on the job and been getting a lot better at, is determining, how serious is this problem? Is this something that, we need to drop everything and address right now? Or is this something that can wait? Because I have 5 other constituents that I'm also trying to work on, or projects coming up, et cetera. Or, do I need to call a director right now and get a response and get someone out there? Or, kind of wait and try and find a different person to talk to, et cetera. Lastly, and I hear Wendy say this all the time, is that you want to, and now I'm not going to remember the phrase, right, you want to under-promise and over-deliver. Under-promise and over-deliver. And I would say I am really terrible at that, but I always think about it when I'm on a call, because I want to promise the world and I want to, work very hard to address whatever issue they're calling about, but I try very hard to remember it's important, to not promise too much until you can confirm that you can deliver. All right. Okay, so like I said, a really important part of our success as an office is the resources that we have been able to build and the relationships we've been able to build, so when we get a call, we can address it, right? Because, I often say no 2 calls I get are ever the same. I'm always amazed every day at the new calls that I get that people call the mayor's office about. Another good one would be, I had a woman who called, so she had donated a bear to the Pittsburgh Zoo 12 years ago. Had made an informal agreement when she donated this bear that she could have the remains of the bear so she could bury the bear in. She raises bears, so she has a bear cemetery where she lays her other bears to rest. And unfortunately, the zoo is governed by laws that they cannot give the remains of any of their animals to a private person. They're required to dispose of the remains in a very specific way. I, of course, didn't know this when she first called, but was able, luckily, our finance director also used to be the director of the zoo when the city ran it, and was able to give me a very detailed explanation, which I could pass along to her. And again, there's nothing that we can do because it's governed by law, but it was so helpful to her to understand that, she wasn't getting brushed off, it was a legal matter. Everyone's hands were tied, and because this bear very clearly was like a child to her. And I understood the feeling of loss that you couldn't have that child back. So, great example of, those relationships and knowing your office and knowing the resources that you have in the city to help, at the minimum, get that person an answer. Give them an explanation that can put their mind to rest. So, the most helpful thing that we have is our system of accountability. So 311 is huge with that because of the way that we can track issues and also look up their background, right? So when someone calls and tells me, I've called 311 for 10 years now about this issue, and I can look back and say, is that correct? And then, if that is true, so what is going on here? What has not been passed along? What do we need to clarify if that's happening? And we also keep, for issues that are not appropriate for 311, like the bears, we have a constituent call receiver document. So every time someone calls, I've got that up, and I'm filling it in as they talk to me about whatever the issue is, and then we can mark it as completed. And then, of course, if they call again, and perhaps my coworker picks up, they can look at the document and say, oh, well, Sally talked to this person, and she addressed that issue for them, or this is where the issue stands right now. And again, 311 serves that same purpose and is so helpful. At the beginning, when Community Affairs first started, we undertook a project of creating a resource guide. So we aggregated all of the data we could get our hands on in the city about city processes and put it into a resource guide. We eventually want to house this on our website, but it was really, really helpful to have, so we have a place of reference for what issues that we need to address. So building relationships, as I said before, Knowing people in departments and knowing what they do and understanding the structure of departments has been integral, right? So when I have come to the place where, I don't have to talk to the director of public works about every public works issue, because I know, the director of the zone is the better person to talk to, or the person that works in the sign shop, and then I can save a lot of extra work for everyone when I know directly who I should go to talk to get an update, or whatever. And that's also been helpful with, especially our relationship with our chiefs in the mayor's office. So our chief operations officer, for example, has been a huge asset to us. So when we have a complicated public works issue, this gentleman has worked in public works, at least 30 years and knows everything inside and out. So anytime I have an issue, he's right there and he's accessible, and he always takes the time to help explain what's going on, and then we can pass it to the constituent. So city council, as I mentioned before, many times people call city council and us. So instead of us, working separately, we can work together and send one email instead of two to get an update about what's going on. And again, it's so helpful with getting background information for what's already been done to address an issue. And it works both ways too, because sometimes council, they might need a little more help, and we're able to provide them with more information or help together get through a process. Like one recent example I've got is we had a woman whose neighbor's retaining wall collapsed on her property. And they had filed a claim with the city 2 years ago about what they thought was water coming off of city property that eventually caused this damage. And so we were able to help work with the law department to finally get that claim wrapped up, for us to identify, where the water was coming from, which was not our property but another. And so we worked very successfully with that council office, who had been dealing with the issue for a while, to get it wrapped up. We talked about the county executive's office and the difference, between those two structures. The nonprofit world is also one that is extremely important. I often have people call because they are homeless. I've had people call that say, I don't even own a cell phone, I'm borrowing my friend's right now, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and we can't get into a shelter. So for us to, we've been able to do our research, we have some background in how you navigate that system and how we can help people get the services they need. Again, even though it's not the city directly that's supplying it. And that goes for food banks as well, that's something people are looking for. And Community Human Services is one of those specific nonprofits. We've been able to sit down with them and they can walk us through those types of processes, give us some background information on the social work that they do, so we know where to send people. And I mentioned before, Charnay Hearn has a social service background, which has been integral in our department in knowing how to address some of those issues. And coming up, we are going to do, next Tuesday actually, our department is going to be going to a mental health first aid training, right? So we're going to talk about problems like addiction and mental illness, that we do see when we're out and about, and that I see as well when I receive calls. And it's important to be able to identify that. So that there's more going on here. This person needs additional service. They need additional help and attention to make sure that they're getting what they need. And one of the main places that we send people for social services as well is at the county level. It's called the Department of Human Services. And they have a lot of resources to be able to help and walk people through what they need. We have something called United Ways 211, where, and usually if someone seems like they're capable of doing a little navigating themselves, I'll send them here first. And they're able to provide resources. They also have a searchable research guide, which is what we want our guide to be like. We want it to be like this 211 system, where you can go online and type in, housing, and it will give you a list of 15 places that can help you with housing in the Pittsburgh area. And most of all, I want to emphasize that looking back when we all first started, it's been incredible how much we've learned, and a lot of it has just been diligence. You know, there's no guide to some of these problems that come in. You know, because they're multi-layered, you know, they need help from a lot of different people. So a lot of it has just been very much doing a lot of research, you know, Googling issues to start there. You know, and we, you know, we've just accumulated so much, and yet we have so much more to learn, right? Because like I said, every call is different, you know. And so, all right, so we're going to talk about our relationship with 311. It is so helpful to have a system that can let us track what's going on, that can let us track the history of a case or a problem, and to be able to work closely with them. And it also allows, you know, brings a lot of accountability. So sometimes emails get lost, emails go unanswered, but there's dedicated staff that are always looking at those 311 requests coming in. And then if I put something through 311 and, you know, something's going on or the issue, like someone had a vacant house and they kept calling because they wanted the house secured. And so our Department of Permit Licenses and Inspections, their definition of secure was different from the resident's definition. So rectifying, so in the system it says, checked, house is safe and secure. You know, and yet the residents were seeing something different. They were still seeing those animals getting in the building and the kids trying to sneak in at night. So, you know, we can communicate and say, you know, can you, give us a little more information on this? Are we even able to secure a building if it's not technically vacant and delinquent? I believe there was a woman who was keeping cats in the building as well. So she was in and out like once every couple weeks. So situations like that bring a lot more. The email receipt of the request, so I don't have a problem with, you know, I don't have to remember to go back and check, but I will get that email that tells me that the issue is being addressed, and that's a huge help. And that system is only getting better. I'm reading even more updates on how system or issues are resolved without me having to remember and go back in the system and check. And ultimately, what I'd like to see is residents, you know, trying to educate them on how 311 works, so they can do it themselves and they can have confidence in the system, which is our ultimate goal here. Okay, great. So we covered phones. We're going into our next section, social media. So this is probably one of the newest initiatives in our office. It's really helpful that we can communicate directly with constituents, especially with trying to announce community events that are going on or to tell people about additional resources. You know, we can meet them where they are. So if you don't have time to come to a community meeting, you can follow us on Facebook and you can see a lot of those announcements that we're going to make. And then nextdoor.com, I don't know where all this is in the country, but this is kind of like Facebook, but only for your neighbors. It's like a digital bulletin board. So people, this is very much focused on, you know, issues around the neighborhood. So maybe someone's missing a cat, or maybe you know, someone wants to hold a yard sale and wants to organize that. You can use that as a tool to do that. Now we can't see what residents write on the board, but we can send out email blasts, notifications, and that's really great because you're getting an email right to your inbox. So although we might not have your email address, it's essentially just as effective. All right, and all of our favorite part of the day, right? So the work day is over and we are all headed out into the community. I spend roughly 3 to 4 nights a week out at a community meeting throughout the city. So this is how we break it down. It's roughly based on geography, but much more so based on, you know, if there are 4 meetings happening in the north side, then all 4 of us are going to the north side that night. You know, we're not saying, oh, that's Sally's turf, so she can figure it out, right? We're just making sure that we are at every meeting in the city. So you can see And then we also kind of base it on where we live in the city as well, right? So Lex lives in Greenfield, so he tends to come, stay in this area. Grant lives and Shanae live in the East End. Keep him over there. And you can see, and then sometimes, just depending on the schedule, we will also share meetings. So Sheridan, for example, I will go to some of the meetings and Brent will go to some of the meetings depending on availability. So that varies a little bit. All right, so I think this is, a very important part of what we do because, we're keeping track of what's happening out in the community. What is the community, how do they feel about certain things? What are they working on? What are their priorities? And how can we, adjust and help them to reach those goals? I think it's so important for people to feel like their city is accessible. So that's, what we try and do is because we're at these meetings every month, we're building relationships. They can feel comfortable to just shoot us an email and say, hey, someone in the community is having this issue, can we work on this, etc. So usually, and every community meeting is very different. They all have a very distinct personality. It's pretty incredible. Some meetings, I have 5 people attended, and some I have 40. So it varies a little bit. So usually take some time to, take complaints. A lot of them tend to be through unrelated. But I can take those in person and take them back and have them addressed. And this is always a really fun section for me. Sometimes, we could spend 20 minutes talking about naming every single pothole in the neighborhood that needs built. I had a woman bring a chunk of asphalt from the street in a bag to emphasize the condition of her street. So, and that meeting is pretty notorious for that type of focus on such issues. I've gotten earfuls about people that don't like our parking meters. But it really ranges a lot. It really just depends on the makeup of the group and what they're focused on. Some community groups are very development oriented. They're out there flipping houses, they're building trails. They've got a really great structure and they have staff. And other groups are all volunteer. So sometimes the problems for them, they're much more focused on smaller things. So we work with all of that. We can also address general questions that people have about the city. What else you happen in meetings sometimes is people will be like, well, the city didn't do this, or this is going on, and that's just blah, blah, blah. And I can stop and I can say, actually, this is how it works, and that's why you're seeing this happen, and well, I can assist you with that problem. And so sometimes I can put a stop to, negative comments that people like to say because they're not familiar or they had one bad experience. And I think that can be really helpful too, is to prevent that. Because then what happens is people don't want to engage at all if they get to a point where they feel like the city systems don't work. So we can be there and we can talk about it, we can explain what's going on, we can connect them to what they need. It can be really helpful. And lastly, we also use our opportunity in meetings to make announcements. So upcoming in June, there is going to be a capital budget hearing. So we're going to push very hard in all of our meetings to try and get people to come. And so we can partner with other departments who need community involvement and help them to bring those people in. And then most importantly, so at the end of every week, we all sit down together and we go over what's going on in our communities. And I think we're not quite there right now, but I think there's a lot of potential to, our community groups are very siloed. And I think if we can get to the point where we can bring more collaboration between community groups, we can be in a great place. So for now, we're just kind of, we're building our understanding of what these communities consist of, what assets they have, and we're all briefed on what's happening in the entire city. And of course we do try and coordinate as well with what's important that we talk about that month. Or if we're brief, make sure we're all briefed on the hot topic issue. Okay, so third section, email. A couple quick things here. So we have a mayor's feedback form. You can go online on the mayor's website. type in your comments. It's kind of similar to the 311 form. That will go to our Deputy Chief of Staff and Policy Manager, and then they will often forward a lot of those to us when somebody needs follow-up. Every once in a while I'll get someone who emails me who says, somebody told me that you can help me with this problem, so I'm going to email you, which is great. That's what we want. We want the community to know that we're out there as a resource. And then lastly, what also is very effective is, so we keep a database of all the contact information of our community leaders, and we can send out updates. So that capital budget hearing, I can talk about it at your meeting, and I can send you an email that you can share with your entire list server, right? So I might talk to 30 people at the meeting, you can send that email to 130. So that's really helpful as well. And helpful for other departments, because when other departments need that community outreach, they don't have to, start from square one. Now we have a system where we are keeping track and keeping that information up to date. We've definitely had some snags here and there from problems with, in the past, because that didn't exist, the community outreach has not been as thorough. So we now have that, so we can address that problem and make sure we're bringing this in for everyone. Okay, so this brings me to the question of, right, so how do we better engage and educate our residents? Besides, the people that call in and I can talk to them about that specific issue, right? How do we get them to the point that, they're understanding the systems themselves and they can help work through the system and have a greater understanding of the city? And one of the ways we do that is with the Civic Leadership Academy, which is a program that I run. I'm in the second semester of it, or second course that we've gone through. So what is the Civic Leadership Academy? And we call it CLA for short. So it's a free 10-week course that is open to all residents. So it's Wednesday evenings from 6 to 8:30 p.m. We visit 12 departments, and we bring in 30 residents over the age of 18. And the goal is that you foster more informed, effective, and inspired residents, right? So that understand processes better and have a more realistic expectation of what their municipal government can do for them. It also creates a lot of transparency, and I think it's just so wonderful to put a face to that department. Right, you can read a negative article in the newspaper about a department, and the city can seem like this overwhelming black box. But this really breaks it down. It puts a face to the people that are plowing your streets and picking up your garbage, or running your 311 system. Wendy, always participates in the CLA, and I think people leave feeling like wow, I had no idea the city did this much, and that we were working on these things, and that system was actually that many steps. So now 10 weeks, 2.5 hours a week is a lot of time for someone to dedicate. So how do we create a system that people are showing up and they're staying consistent and they're staying engaged? We do that a few different ways. So one, to participate, you have to apply. I'll go through these in a little more detail. We also have the mayor give the opening speech, so you get to spend about a half hour, your group and the mayor, which I think really means a lot to people, to get to really see and ask him questions. There's also what I try to emphasize, a big networking component, right? So you have people from all over the city that are coming into this. We also elect 2 class representatives at the end. They speak at graduation, and they also are in charge of trying to keep the class engaged in meeting up after class, and helping with the class project, right? So at the end, the class is expected to do a service project in the community. And then we have a graduation, right? A formal graduation. You get a certificate of completion, and we also try to have the mayor come and speak at that as well. So you really get a feeling of accomplishment that you have made it through these 10 weeks. So I'm going to put a list up here of the departments that we visit. Tonight we will be going to the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority, so I'll be joining you for the tour. Then I will be staying there for our class at 6. So for how most of these work is, some departments will give a presentation, hour and a half presentation, and then answer questions. Others are a little more hands-on, so when we go to the Fire Bureau and EMS, for example, they do a tour of the fire trucks and the equipment they use. For the police bureau, we had the bomb squad come in and show us their equipment that they use. So it varies a little bit. Some of these are downtown, some of these will go on site, which I think is really helpful as well, especially for Parks and Recreation. We go out to a building, right? So you're being pulled into a park, you're being pulled into a city asset that maybe you didn't know about. We usually go to the ice skating rink, for example, and a lot of people didn't even know that there was an ice skating rink there they could use. You might also notice that there are 10 weeks of 12 departments. Some of these we split, right? So Department of Public Works and Parks and Rec share the same class, and they just do an hour presentation instead of 2. So, and it's just, as most people describe it, it's a big data dump of information. Part of the application process, what's really important is diversity, right? So if you remember that map, we'll pull that up again here. So there's always a lot of animosity friendly or not, between the north side of Pittsburgh, the south side of Pittsburgh, and the east end. Every meeting I go to, I will hear the north side say, oh, those people on the south side get all the resources and the money. Or the people in the east end say, oh, they're spending all this time on the North Shore. So people always have this idea that they're... You forgot the West. Oh yeah, and of course the West End, right? West End, there's another notorious, right? Definitely don't want to loop them in with everybody. Right, so a lot of this idea that the city can be very siloed, right? You exist in a micro-universe in these neighborhoods. It has somewhat to do with our topography. We always joke that Pittsburghers don't cross rivers, which is very true. I live in Mount Washington, and my dad is from there, and he does not know anything about the East End. He's not interested. He doesn't go there. This is where he's comfortable. A lot of my family is like that. So you'll see that a lot. Anyway, so it's really important that we can bring together these people from all over the city who are all civic-minded. And I think it really opens up people's eyes in what's going on in other places. So I also try and get diversity in what people do. Right? I don't want a room full of social service workers. I want people who work in the tech industry. I want lawyers. I want community activists. Right? Because the lawyer's opinion on what's important is different from the social workers. So those people, I want those people to be exposed to each other and create this space. You can have a really informative conversation about what's important in our city. So I also try and mix up the level of activism, right? I don't want our most connected people in the city, a group of 30 of them. I want some of those people, and then I want people that I can tell are just starting out. And you put them in a room together, and then those people who are less active, ideally, become more active because they're exposed to these people that are doing so much and are very inspiring. So I try and get a big gap of ages. We've had age 20 to 80 in the class I have right now. Ethnicity, people from all different kinds of backgrounds. A lot of different nationalities, which we'll talk about in a second. And another one I've tried to look at is homeowners versus renters. So people who rent tend to have a little bit of a different outlook than a homeowner, right? And I often, something that people love to bring up at community meetings is, our neighborhood's going down the toilet because there's too many renters, right? And we need to stop this, and this is a really terrible problem. But it isn't necessary, right? And so when I can bring those two people together and say, look, if these people might rent, they care about the community just as much as you do. I also have some of the questions that we ask. A lot of them are pretty generic. So a new one that I've added is interactions with the city, right? I want to know, like, what is your current, you had positive interactions, negative? And then I want a mix of both, right? I want to bring in those people that might have had a bad experience, because I want them to learn about the city, and how maybe you can address the problem differently in the future, or why that problem didn't go well, etc. So that was very helpful. And we try to emphasize as well, we want people to carry this information back to their community. So we're trying to bring that up a lot. And the last one that I added that I'm still working on the best way to try and get this through, but the best CLA student is one that comes to class prepared with, that has a context of this, where this department is. You can get that by following local news. So I tried to, on the application, ask people, how often do you read the paper? What paper do you read? To put an emphasis on, if you're reading in the newspaper, right, the newspaper writes about what our Department of Public Works is doing, or whatever, scandal that's happening. And now you can come to class and ask about it, and you can get, and find out does the answer that the DPW worker gives, is it the same as what you hear in the newspaper? Why or why not? Right? It's a really important conversation to have. So I'm trying to kind of push that as well. So you're going to say, I mentioned nationality. So the mayor has an initiative called Welcoming Pittsburgh, started last year. Its goal is to do a better job of improving the standard of living for our immigrant and new American communities in the city. Right? Oftentimes they can be invisible, and that's never good. So there's a whole lot of different initiatives that are happening under this, and one of them is that we dedicate up to 15 of our seats in CLA for people that fall into that immigrant or new American category. So they can come, learn about the city, crack open the black box, and hopefully make the city a little more accessible for that community that they are from, right? Because they can, now it's a little less overwhelming to understand how to navigate that foreign system. And then lastly, the service project. So this is always really fun to watch. So it's the job of the class to come up with the idea for the service project. So they have quick discussions after class about what they want to do. And usually they split into two. One side of the class likes to do something more communication oriented with a way to get that information they learn out to the community. And then the other is a fan of doing that 4-hour service project where you're going out on Saturday and getting your hands dirty, picking up some garbage. And so they have to work that out, figure out what they want, figure out how to execute it, and make it happen. And then that also encourages that networking and growing those relationships, which you hope eventually turn into wider collaboration. And so I have some examples here of what we've done in the past. The last one we did was we went to One's Girls, which is a young women's shelter and education center, and I cleaned baby toys all morning with my class. Things like that, raising donations, roadside cleanups, packaging used computer parts for families in need. And I think one of the most exciting parts of the program is some of the people that have graduated in the class have really gone on to do great things. One of the best here is, so a new community development corporation has been founded in the West End, the one that Bill pointed out that we cannot forget about, very important. Wonderful little neighborhoods there. So the new executive director of that CDC was a graduate of CLA. And he had told me that he actually hadn't really been that active in the community before he took the class. And that was kind of what got him to the next level and got him involved. And now, he's doing great things for his community. I have previous students that are organizing big citywide events like Big Music Day. And now that's a little easier for them because they have a better idea of how those processes work to work with the city. People have become the president of their local community groups, and we did hold our very first alumni event was a happy hour at one of our students was the executive director of the Museum, which I hope you get a chance to visit when you're here in Pittsburgh. It's just downtown, a few blocks away. Moving forward with the program, things that are happening now and things that we hope to see. So right now, we have been filming all of our CLA sessions, and we're going to put them online and broadcast them on the city cable channel. So, for those who will never be able to commit those 2.5 hours for 10 weeks. You now have access to this information online. So I'm very excited to see how those turn out. We are looking into bringing in a youth aspect. At one time, there was a totally separate CLA for youth. Unfortunately, our department just doesn't have quite the capacity to do a third CLA. So we're working on, can we bring in 5 youth, people of maybe at the ages 17 and 18, high school seniors that can participate in the class. And I really, what I hopefully we'll get to work on more this summer is I really want to start bringing those alumni back together, right? From people from different years. So they can get together and talk and at the minimum inspire each other to keep working hard in their communities, to hear about what different events they're doing, etc. Those have gone. The first one that we had did go quite well. And we're looking at is there a way to break this down and could we do one session of the CLA and bring people in instead of 10? Like, are there other ways that we can deliver this information to constituents? So something that we might explore in the future as well. So I think with that, that is my conclusion. Did I see another question? Maybe?
All right, let's hear it for Sally.